Good evening, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and I wanted to offer an apology to Adam from Adam's Life. The reason I say this is because I asked him a question, and I just thought because he knew so much about Decatur, he might know the answer, and apparently he doesn't. And I really can't say I blame him. He's 20 years my junior, so he probably doesn't remember half of the stuff that I remember. And that's perfectly okay. So, I'm going to tell you some things that I do remember, and then hopefully this will really answer the very question I had asked him. I did some research. Now, for anybody who has ever driven in Decatur, you know that there is a road that's called Southside Drive. Okay? And for those of you who have never driven in Decatur, there is actually a road on the south side of town called Southside Drive. And people are very familiar with this road, the ones that actually live here, because there used to be a factory. It would be on the, as you're driving down from east to west, if you're heading west and you're driving from the east, you would find on the left-hand side a factory that used to be known as Borg-Warner. I know this because I had some relatives that used to work at Borg-Warner. And, of course, on the right-hand side, you would find WA&D Television. Now, what you don't know is that right next to WA&D, right now is a kids and fitness building. Okay, it's a building where they make kids fit. I don't know. I've not been in there, but it didn't used to be that. There actually was a farming store that used to be there. It really wasn't a farming store. It was a place where you could get work boots and overalls and tractor parts and that kind of thing in that place. It started with an I. I don't remember. It was a three-letter store name, and I do not remember the name now. It's been such a long time. No, it did not start with an I. It was Tractor Supply Company. Tractor Supply Company was there. It was TSC. I remember that. It was TSC. But I bet you're saying to me, well, okay, but that really had nothing to do with the question that I had asked Adam, and that's true. When you go past what used to be TSC, you also find a gas station. Right across from the street from the gas station is another building that I did ask him about. That building used to be a place called Cousin Fred's. And it was a variety store. You could go in and they used to sell farm implements. They used to sell overalls and boots and that kind of stuff. But they also sold toys. They sold all kinds of goody stuff, dishes, that kind of thing, kind of rivaling Farm and Fleet or even the Big R stores that you have today. Okay, and that used to be called Cousin Fred's. It's a great store. I don't remember too much about it, but there it was. Now, another question I'd asked was about the Tolly stores. Now, Tolly's was at IGA, okay, and I remember Tolly's IGA because when I was a kid, we used to go to the Colonial Mall, and anybody that knows where the Colonial Mall is would know where Tolly's was. Okay, you would go in there. I remember distinctly seeing IGA merchandise on the shelves of the Tolly's Market. And if I remember right, the sign had like a round ball. The sign out front had a big round ball. And I don't remember too much about Tolly's, but I do remember that. I'll probably have to do some research and look up late 70s newspapers to see if I can find some pictures of Tolly's. But Tolly's was a supermarket. You went in there and you bought your groceries there. I didn't remember, I have some relatives that did, but I did not remember that there was another Tolly's that was on 22nd Street where Save-A-Lot is now. Okay, where Save-A-Lot is now, that used to also be a Tolly's. I didn't remember that. Kind of unfortunate, but that's true. Now, for those of you who don't know, I remember two distinct A&Ps that used to be in town. The first one was on it was on Main Street. Okay, it is a thrift store now, but if you look at the architecture of the building and look at it very carefully, you will see that it used to be an A&P. And it's on 51 South. That's, I guess you'd call it South Main Street. You're going straight south. As you pass the A&P, of course, you're also going to then pass a restaurant. That restaurant used to be a Steak and Shake. Okay. And that's just before you get to El Dorado Street. Anyway, and keep in mind, that's if you're going southbound on 51, that's what you see. You see an A&P building on your left-hand side. Then you see the old Steak and Shake, and then you go under the bridge, and there's El Dorado Street. All right, now for those of you who do not remember, there were two Goldblatt stores. One of which I remember very well. It used to be in the Fairview Plaza. StarTech is there now, but that particular Goldblatt's, I remember that because we had an ice storm, and I believe it was back in 1978, and I was in the toy department. Now Goldblatt's had an upper level and a lower level, okay, and you went down into the lower level, and that was where the toy department was. Well, the lights went out, kaboom, kabang. I was half out of my wits with that one, okay, but there you go. People have told me that the other Goldblatt's was in, not Northgate Mall, but Brentwood Village. I'm not 100% for sure on that. I don't remember that particular Goldblatt's, but if anybody would like to refresh my memory on that, that'd be great. Now, as for Northgate Mall, when you went to Northgate Mall years ago, you had your Eisner Osco, which ended up being a furniture store, which now is completely gone. And then right next to that, you would have the General Cinema, and there was a bookstore there and an arcade there. And what you would do is you'd walk past the General Cinema and the bookstore and the arcade, and when you did, you went to a place called Turnstile. Now that Turnstile was bought out and it became Venture. And Venture was a good store, and I loved it personally. But then eventually Kay's Merchandise took over, and then of course Kay's Merchandise went out of business. Now, the General Cinema is where Schnucks actually took over the General Cinema, and now of course that whole building's abandoned. And of course Schnucks didn't just take over the General Cinema, they also took over the bookstore and the arcade that was there. And if I recall correctly, I think there was a clothing store there too. Been a long time, but I think there was. And then of course you had Turnstile, which became Venture, which became Kay's Merchandise, which became gone. Alright. Now, not too far from there was also a Burger Chef, and I do have to remember there were several Burger Chefs in Decatur. Hardee's, of course, bought them out. It's really sad because Burger Chef was great. I will also tell you that where Ameren IP is now in Decatur, Illinois, there's an Ameren. It used to be Ameren IP. There used to be Illinois Power. Where that building is, and it's in downtown. It's right next to the jail. That used to be Montgomery Ward's. And Montgomery Ward's was a department store, much like JCPenney and Sears. I miss them terribly. They were really good. We used to call it Monkey Ward's. Kind of a funny nickname. And trying to remember, in town we used to have a Sandy's. That turned to Buc-ee's, and then of course it disappeared. A lot of stuff changed when I was a kid. Now in South Shores, there is a Monocle's Pizza. Of course, that Monocle Pizza has just recently moved. That Monocle Pizza used to be the Dairy Queen. And if I recall correctly, right next to the Dairy Queen was a Woolworths. And if I recall correctly, there was also a Ben Franklin that used to be next to it. And then, of course, that's where your A&P was. So, you would go to the Dairy Queen, you would go to Woolworths, then you go to Ben Franklin, and after that you go to A&P and get your groceries. A&P was a grocery store chain. Like I said, there was an A&P on North Main Street. Well, South Main Street, I guess you'd call it. I don't know. But anyway, you kind of get an idea of where all these things were. People often talk about Shoppers World. I have absolutely no memory of Shoppers World. I do remember that downtown Decatur used to have a Carson Perry Scott. The Sears building, where the library is today, that used to be Sears. J.C. Penney was also downtown. I do vaguely remember that. I used to see movies at the Lincoln. The Avon is where I saw one of the Muppet movies. I do remember that. I do remember the Rogers Theater as well. I remember Adam talking about that in a previous video. I watched The Empire Strikes Back at the Rogers Theater, so I do remember that. Not too much else do I remember of Decatur. I do know that where Kroger's is now, that's not where Kroger's always was. It used to be, now, for those of you who remember Old Country Buffet, of course it's gone now, but where Old Country Buffet used to be, that's where Kroger's also used to be, and so there you go. Wow. I mean, that's a lot to remember. Where the ADM building is downtown, that used to be the Decatur Public Library. I do remember that. Not a lot else do I remember. I do know that there's a big R store where it is now, used to be the Kmart. I remember having 2 Kmarts in Decatur. Of course, there's still one left, and it's not too far from where I'm at now. I won't say how far, but it's not. I could literally drive there, no problem. Yeah. I know I'm sitting here trying to remember all this stuff. A lot of memories. But anyway, if I've gotten any of these memories wrong, please, by all means, just leave a comment down below. But I think I'm pretty accurate on this stuff. I can't think of anything else at this point that I would want to remember. But there you go. I do remember there was a Woolworths downtown, and I do remember eating there once. They had a little cafe thing down there, and it was good. It was good food. Anybody that went down there really got a treat. So, yeah. From what I found out, Woolworths was originally taken over by Foot Locker. So when you go to a Foot Locker, you're going to the same company that used to own Woolworths. And for those of you who do not remember Woolworths, I can tell you that it was kind of what they call a 5 and dime. See, back then, you could actually buy things for a nickel or a dime. Try doing that today, yeah, right. The dollar stores today would be more like what the nickel and dime stores were back then. Yeah, if you had a nickel or a dime, you really actually had something back in those days. Good luck with that now. But anyway, there you go. Now you know the whole story. I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.